In early 1932, a young American man came to Peking.
Approaching Peking by rail across the brown winter plain in 1932 still had the emotional impact it had had during the 500 years since the city walls were built. For Peking, till the 1960s, was the world's most populous walled city.
John Fairbank, a PhD student from Oxford, came to Peking to complete his PhD thesis. He conducted his research in a number of Qing Dynasty customs archives. This 25-year-old scholar had only recently shifted his academic focus to this faraway Asian nation. Soon, his fiancée, Wilma, joined him in Peking, and they were married in a pretty courtyard. The bride had graduated from Radcliffe College of Harvard University with a degree in fine arts, and she was fascinated by Chinese art. After they arrived, John Fairbank was busy with various academic activities and with his study of Chinese. Wilma, together with her younger sister Marion, who was visiting them, painted Peking.
I remember so well that train trip, because this was Chinese New Year, so everybody was so dressed up, and all the children had on these adorable little padded coats for the boys did, and the little lion shoes. Remember the shoes that they had? And of course, all those hutongs in Peking, I don't know whether any of them are left, are they?
Some of them.
I hope they're saving them. Well, I tell you, I remember it so well that I first met Liang and his wife on a I remember it was a very cold January night. And I remember how charming, how warm and charming they were and friendly they were, and how beautiful she was, too.
Some 2 months after our wedding, we met Liang and his wife, Lin Yin. Neither they nor we were aware that years of close friendship lay ahead, but we were captivated from the first.
In 1932, the newly wedded Fairbanks met Liang and Lin in Peking. The Chinese couple was well acquainted with both Boston, where Wilma had lived, and London, where John Fairbank had been studying. They had recently begun to thoroughly research the architecture of this ancient nation. Liang gave Chinese names to their new American friends. John was called Fei Jiangqing, and Wilma Fei Weimei. In 1932, when the Fairbanks first entered Liang and Lin's lives, Huiyin had just given birth to their second child. Their baby son was named Tongji, in commemoration of Li Jie, the author of Building Standards, the masterpiece of ancient Chinese architecture. They had moved to Peking from the northeast 1 year earlier, and they were renting the No. 3 courtyard on Beizongbu Lane.
This house had 2 lovely little courtyards. I remember as a young girl when Mom held both my hands while we walked in the backyard. Because the windowsill was low, the winter sun could penetrate deep into the room. The plum blossoms in front of the window that Mom so loved, the clay animal figures, the sofa, and the painting and calligraphy on the walls were all bathed in sunshine.
As the eldest Liang brother, Sicheng, together with his wife Huiyin, were responsible for taking care of the younger brothers and sisters. Many friends and relatives would visit the Liang courtyard.
My entry into the life of the household was regarded with suspicion by the mother and the servants. Despite these misgivings, my comings and goings were in time accepted. I often went over to the Liangs at the end of the day by bicycle or rickshaw. I would walk through the inner garden to find Wei. Settled in a cozy corner of the living room with cups of hot tea, we hastened to relate the stories or thoughts we had been saving for each other.
I did not think once that I could have a friend in a woman. It is my luck to have met you, because otherwise I may never know and enjoy this certain warm flow of feelings between two women.
The correspondence between Liang and Lin and the Fairbanks began from when they first met in Peking.
这封信是写给 Wilma 和 John 的，是他称呼是 Dearest Wilma and Darling John. Phyllis. Love. 就是都是 Phyllis 签名的。我们叫 Wilma 叫费姨。这个小弟是我，宝宝是梁在斌，我姐姐。
But the Liangs filled a role in our experience of China that made a great difference to us. And any account of Wilma and me as cultural intermediaries must include them, as well as their close friend and neighbor, Professor Y.L. Chin.
Jinyu Lin, a Tsinghua professor, was 6 years older than Sicheng. He had studied business at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Due to a shift in interest, he entered Columbia University and then London University to study politics and philosophy. Later, he became a logician. Jin returned to China to establish the Department of Philosophy at Tsinghua University. Beginning when they both lived on Beizongbu Lane, he was almost always the Liang's neighbor, and he became their best friend. Today, the number 3 courtyard on Beizongbu Lane has become the number 24 courtyard in Beijing. In the 1930s, the 2 neighboring courtyards held frequent weekend parties. The Liangs and Jin were the hosts, and the visitors were mostly returnees from the UK or the US. In addition, some literary novices also joined them. Timidly, I followed Mr. Shen Zhongwen into that famous ladies' parlor on Zhongbu Lane. This was the first time I met Lin Huiyin. The first thing she said to me was, "You write with true emotion. That is very precious." I was greatly encouraged. When she spoke, no one could interrupt. However, her talkativeness was nothing like the gossip of a married woman. Rather, it always consisted of well-grounded, insightful, and incisive critiques.
年轻人来这里倾听一位女子的妙语连珠，人所共知她的爽直前卫，拥有天赋、天分和聪明。哦，她讨厌做聪明人，她激情无限，创造力无限。她的诗意不仅仅是她能写诗歌，她敏锐的感受力和鉴赏力，总之，人所渴求的她应有尽有，除却学究气。学究气的反面是丰富多彩，一个人学究气越重，就越丧失色彩。我宁愿自己更富于色彩，看看徽因是多么丰富多彩，而可怜的我，如此苍白，彻头彻尾的苍白。
She was creatively gifted as a writer, a poet, a woman of great aesthetic sensitivity and broad intellectual interests, and socially charming. The household, or any scene she was in, tended to revolve around her.
我妈这个人呢，很爱说话，这是她很健谈。所以人家都说她这个，都记得她也到了什么人多的时候，好像就我妈一个人在那儿说。她是能侃侃而谈。她为什么爱说呢？我也想了想，她的这个思维的方式跟我父亲不大一样。我父亲是想很多事情，他自己心里想，你看你不知道他在想什么。我妈可不一样，我妈是一边想一边说，就是她的思维过程你可以看得见的。所以后来在这个我在想我妈1955年去世啊，正好是我们大搞政治运动之前，她那个劲儿啊，你恐怕要碰到运动，恐怕是够她受的，就是。